After my husband's affair stole everything, his mistress's husband came to me. He said, "I have 300 million, just say yes, and tomorrow we'll sign at the courthouse." He said it while I was standing in the lobby of the apartment building my husband had emptied behind my back. The lock on our door had already been changed. My key turned halfway, clicked against something new, and stopped. I looked down at the cardboard box in my arms. It held my winter boots, 2 framed photographs, and the blue ceramic bowl my grandmother had left me. The building manager, Mr. Doyle, stood beside the elevator pretending to study his clipboard. "Lena, I'm sorry," he said. "Your husband told us you had moved out." I looked at the printed notice taped to my door. It said the unit was now occupied by Evan Brooks and an authorized resident named Claire Brooks. My name was not on it. My husband Evan had promised me that Claire was only a client from his event company. He had also promised that the late nights were temporary. The locked phone was for work, and the sudden transfer of our savings was to protect us from a tax problem. I had believed each explanation because believing him was easier than admitting my marriage had become a room where I was the only person without a key. "Call him," I said. Mr. Doyle lowered his voice. "He already did. He said your separation agreement was signed this morning." The phrase hit harder than the changed lock. I had signed a packet at our kitchen counter 3 days earlier. Evan told me it was a temporary financial disclosure so his lawyer could prepare for mediation. I had signed every page while he made tea and told me we were still a family, even if we needed space. My phone showed no message from his lawyer, no court notice, no warning, just a photograph Evan had sent that morning of an empty bedroom with the caption, "I hope you find peace." Then, a man in a navy coat walked through the glass doors and stopped when he saw me. He carried nothing that suggested he had come to comfort anyone. "You're Lena Hart," he said. I tightened my grip on the box. "Who are you?" "Adrian Brooks, Claire's husband." Adrian owned Brooks Civic Partners, a development group valued by business reporters at more than $300 million. Adrian glanced at the changed lock, then at the box in my arms. "My wife told me you were unstable and had agreed to leave. Your wife has never met me. That is one of the reasons I'm here." He placed a small brass key on top of my grandmother's blue bowl. It was old-fashioned, scratched along one edge, and tied to a white paper tag. "This opens a storage locker at Lakeside Station," he said. "Claire rented it under a name I didn't recognize. I found your name on the delivery receipt." I stared at the key. "Why would my name be there?" "That is what I need you to help me find out." He said the next part without changing his expression. "I have a development empire worth 300 million. Say yes, and we'll be at the courthouse by 9 tomorrow morning." For 4 seconds, I heard nothing but the elevator cables moving behind me. Then I said yes. Not because I wanted Adrian. Not because I wanted to punish Evan with a photograph from a courthouse. I said yes because Evan had used my signature to erase me, and Adrian was offering me a legal position from which I could read every document that had been used against both of us. Adrian did not touch me. He only picked up the key and handed it back. "You should know this is a contract, not a rescue." "Good," I said. "I'm not looking for a rescuer." I had spent 7 years as a compliance auditor for a medical supply network. I knew how people hid things inside ordinary paperwork, a harmless label, a routine approval, a date changed by 1 day. The first time I read Evan's separation packet, I had noticed the page numbers skipped from 8 to 10. I had asked him about it, and he had kissed my forehead and said the missing page was an exhibit his lawyer had removed. That night, a family law attorney named Nina Patel read the packet and pointed to the signature page. "This assigns your interest in the apartment, your joint savings, and the ownership units in Hart Events to your husband. It also says you received independent legal advice." "I didn't." "Then the signature can be challenged. We need proof you were misled." Adrian explained that a confidential design package had disappeared from his firm's secure portal and resurfaced inside a competing proposal submitted by Evans Events Company. The account showed my name as the approving administrator. "I have never worked for your firm," I said. "That is the contradiction," Adrian replied. "Someone built a digital version of you." The storage locker opened with the brass key just after dawn. Inside were banker's boxes, a portable printer, 2 phones sealed in plastic bags, and my wedding guest book. Claire had written on the first page, "For the life we are about to build." The guest book made my stomach tighten. Evan and I had used it to collect messages from friends. Claire had signed her name beside a sentence about second chances. Nina photographed every item before we moved it. One phone had no passcode, and its messages showed Claire sending Evan photographs of documents, room layouts, and my driver's license. The messages were not romantic. They were colder. "She signs anything if you say it is for our future. Keep her busy with the apartment story. The board meeting cannot happen while she is still listed as owner." I read the last line twice. "Owner of what?" Adrian answered before I asked. "Hart Events is not just a small company. Evan used your name when he registered it. The company owns the contracts for several city festivals. Claire wanted those contracts transferred into a nonprofit she controlled. She planned to use them to qualify for the transit bid as a community partner. The affair had been the visible part. The hidden plan was to use my clean record, my tax history, and my reputation with local organizers as a cover. Evan had not been leaving me for Claire. He had been using me as a passport. By noon, Adrian and I were married in a small civil ceremony at the courthouse. Nina insisted on a written agreement protecting both of us from each other's debts and giving me no automatic claim to Adrian's company. Adrian agreed without negotiation. The clerk asked whether we understood the nature of the marriage. "We understand exactly," I said. Adrian looked at me. "We do." The people who had lied to us had already scheduled a public celebration. Evan and Claire were hosting a launch dinner that evening at a private club. My photograph was printed on the program beside the words, founder and community vision lead. They were planning to announce that I had voluntarily transferred my company and stepped away for personal reasons. I could have stormed in. I could have shouted Evan's name and thrown the guest book across the table. Instead, Nina told me to attend as the founder they were pretending I had become. Let them say the lie in front of witnesses, she said. People remember a speech. Courts remember a record. At the club, Claire greeted me with both hands extended, as if we were old friends. Her smile never reached her eyes. Lena, sweetheart, you came, she said. I was worried the separation had been too hard on you. Evan stood behind her in a dark suit. He did not look surprised. He looked irritated that I had arrived without permission. You changed the locks, I said. Because you agreed to move out, he replied softly. Please don't create a scene. There are donors here. Claire lowered her voice. This is not the right night to prove you are still attached to a life you chose to leave. That was her cold line. She said it gently, so the people near us could hear only concern. My hand closed around the old brass key in my pocket. You are right, I said. Tonight is about the life you chose to display. The dinner moved forward. Evan gave a speech about resilience. Claire spoke about women rebuilding after difficult transitions. On the screen behind them, my company logo appeared beside a new foundation logo. Several guests turned toward me with sympathetic smiles, assuming I was the abandoned wife who had been invited out of pity. Then Evan announced that I had signed away all operational control and that Claire would lead the new partnership. The applause was polite. My face felt hot, but my voice stayed even when I stood. I have one correction, I said. Evan's smile tightened. Lena, this is not the time. It is the exact time. The document you are displaying is not a transfer agreement. It is an unsigned draft. The final agreement has never been executed. Someone near the bar stopped clapping. Claire reached for the microphone, but I continued. The signature you used on your packet was collected for a financial disclosure. It was then copied onto a different document. The original file has a creation timestamp, and the printer in your storage locker has the matching serial record. Evan's face changed. Claire's expression sharpened. You broke into my property, she said. No, Adrian said from the back of the room. I opened a locker leased in my name. Nina Patel is holding the inventory report. The room shifted toward him. People recognized Adrian. They recognized the weight of his presence, but more importantly, they recognized that he had chosen a side. Claire tried to laugh. Adrian, you are making a very expensive mistake. I made it for 11 months, he said. I'm correcting it tonight. He nodded to his assistant, who connected a laptop to the screen. The first image was the delivery receipt with my name typed as an administrator. The second was a security log from the medical supply network where I worked. It showed me inside a training session in another state at the exact time the account had approved the download. The third was a message from Claire telling Evan to keep me away from the company records. No one spoke. The silence was not dramatic. It was practical. People were recalculating the danger of standing beside them. Evan stepped toward me. You don't understand what you are doing. I understand that you moved my belongings into a hallway and told a manager I had left. I understand that you filed a false separation packet. I understand that you used my name in a bid involving public money. You signed. You needed me to believe I had. I turned to the donors and organizers in the room. There will be a formal review of every contract connected to Heart Events. Until it is complete, no city partner should release funds or rely on the foundation's statements about ownership. One of the festival directors, a woman named Marisol Green, stood near the dessert table. She had worked with me for years. Lena, she said, I received an email from Evan last month saying you had approved the transfer of our youth program. I thought it was strange because you were out of town. Do you still have it? Marisol pulled out her phone. I saved the attachment because the wording felt wrong. The attachment was a letter carrying my copied signature. It named Claire's nonprofit as the new recipient of a grant. The file metadata showed it had been created on the portable printer's connected laptop. That was the point where the dinner stopped being a social event and became a record. If you were in my position, would you have walked out quietly or let the truth reach every person who had been asked to trust the lie? I kept wondering whether I was protecting my dignity or simply giving my humiliation a larger audience. If you understand why I stayed in that room, a like would mean more to me than you know, and I would genuinely read what you think in the comments. Evan's mother, Judith, approached me near the coat room. She had spent the entire evening telling guests that I was overwhelmed and needed kindness. You are hurting my son, she whispered. Your son changed my lock. He made a mistake. Families should not destroy each other over paperwork. This is not paperwork, it is my name. Judith looked at Adrian. You married her for revenge? No, I said. He married me because we both needed a witness who could not be bought by your family. That answer traveled farther than I expected. By the time I reached the coat check, 3 people had quietly stepped away from Evan's table. My employer placed me on paid leave while its security team investigated the copied administrator account. I went through calendar entries, badge scans, travel receipts, and training rosters with my friend Tessa from Information Security. She found that the account had been created from an old tablet Evan had given me, then kept in his car after he asked for a factory reset. Tessa only said, people who plan a theft make the victim feel helpful. The investigation found more. Claire had submitted a grant application claiming she had been a community partner for 3 years. It used photographs from events I had organized, with captions altered to place her at the center. My name was useful because people trusted it. My absence was useful because nobody expected me to defend it. Adrian's board called an emergency meeting. Claire used her minority voting interest to accuse Adrian of marital retaliation. I attended through a remote connection with Nina beside me. The brass key rested on the table beside my laptop. Claire's attorney asked why I had married Adrian so quickly. Because my husband had used a false document to remove me from my own company, I said. Adrian had evidence connected to the same network. We created a legal boundary and then preserved the records. You expected financial benefit. Our agreement gives me no ownership in Brooks Civic Partners. It gives me the right to inspect records related to the joint investigation. I expected the truth to cost less than another year of silence. The board voted to freeze Claire's access to every company system. That was the first quiet revenge that felt real. No speech, no argument, just a password that stopped working. Evan called that evening. His voice sounded smaller than it had at the club. You can still fix this, he said. Tell them the documents were misunderstood. You made me homeless to protect a lie. I was trying to build something. You were trying to build it with my name. He said Claire had promised him a position in the foundation. She had promised they would travel, buy a house, and turn hard events into a national brand. Then he admitted the part he had hidden. The transit proposal was failing, and the nonprofit partnership was the only way Claire could qualify. If the bid failed, she would lose a loan secured against her family trust. Evan had signed the documents because he believed success would make all of us richer. His motive was not love. It was panic dressed as ambition. The state suspended the grant payments. The transit authority opened its own review, and the medical supply network cleared my name after Tessa confirmed my badge was in another state during every suspicious approval. Evan's apartment was no longer legally mine, but the lease had been obtained with joint funds. Nina filed a claim for the money I had put into it and for the value of the company contracts transferred without consent. I did not ask for the house as revenge. I asked for an accounting. That distinction made Evan angry. You always reduce everything to numbers, he told me during mediation. Numbers are what remains after people stop telling the truth. Claire arrived late to mediation with a folder she claimed proved I had authorized the transfers. Nina opened it. Every page was a copy of a copy, and one carried a signature with the wrong middle initial. I had never used that initial on a legal document. Nina slid the page back. This is not evidence. It is evidence of editing. The mediator ordered Claire to preserve all original devices. 2 days later, her attorney withdrew. Her foundation lost the city partnership. The festival directors moved their contracts to an independent nonprofit led by Marisol, and Marisol offered me a paid advisory role once my leave ended. Judith stopped calling after learning Evan had placed his mother's home as collateral. Later, she sent one brief message. I should have listened when you said the paperwork felt wrong. I answered, I hope you protect your name from now on. Adrian and I kept our courthouse marriage during the investigation. We lived separately at first, with different routines. He left meeting notes on the kitchen counter. I moved them into a neat stack and wrote questions in the margins. We did not pretend the marriage was romantic. He remembered that I hated surprise visitors, and he gave me a key to his townhouse only after asking, do you want this? Or would it feel like another lock someone else controls? I chose the key. The criminal case lasted almost a year. Claire accepted responsibility for the forged applications and unauthorized transfers. Evan pleaded to document fraud and conspiracy. His sentence was reduced because he provided the original tablet, the account credentials, and a complete list of every person he had contacted. He lost the company, the apartment, and the comfortable story he had told about being a misunderstood entrepreneur. He asked for one final meeting before sentencing. I agreed in a lawyer's office with Nina present. I did love you, he said. You loved the version of me who did not check the details. He looked down. Is there any chance we can forgive each other? I can forgive myself for trusting you. You will have to decide what to do with the rest. He nodded, and for once he did not argue. My employer cleared my record in a public letter. Marisol invited me to the festival launch for the first contract recovered from Claire's nonprofit. I declined the stage and stood near the registration table while volunteers used a new sign that read, Community work belongs to the community. Adrian arrived late. He did not take my hand in front of everyone. He simply set a small envelope beside my coffee. Inside was the deed to a narrow office near the lake, purchased in my name with money from the settlement. You can turn it into whatever you want, Adrian said. I looked at the brass key from the storage locker, still scratched along one edge. I had kept it through every hearing, every interview, and every sleepless night. It had started as a clue to the life other people were trying to take from me. Now it opened nothing. I placed it in the bottom drawer of my new desk beside the courthouse marriage certificate and the first clean copy of my restored company records. The divorce from Evan became final in early spring. Adrian and I renewed our vows in the same courthouse, not because a contract needed replacing, but because we wanted the choice to exist without an emergency attached to it. Nina signed as a witness. Marisol brought the repaired blue bowl from my grandmother's apartment. Afterward, Adrian and I drove to the lake office. The rooms were empty except for 2 desks, a working printer, and a window facing the water. Later, I said. First, I want to hear how the building sounds when nobody is lying in it. He smiled and sat beside me without filling the silence. I opened the drawer, touched the old brass key, and closed it again. My name was on the lease. My name was on the bank account. My name was on every page that mattered. Outside, the lake moved under the afternoon light, steady and unconcerned. For the first time in months, I did not check whether a lock would turn. I already knew it would.